All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Welcome to another Visory webinar. We're excited about this one. And Mandy, I am still trying to figure out how this is a December webinar because I feel like 2024 just started.
Yes. Who was I was talking about that with Megan yesterday. She was like sending me, I can't believe that we are doing 2025. Oh, it was Cindy. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy how quickly this year has went by.
Out of this world. It seems like
What?
they are just flying by faster and faster.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Cindy, I do apologize. We're not going to be able to go live on Facebook today. It's saying that they're having an error. So
Oh, a
yeah,
Facebook issue.
yeah,
Bummer. Okay, well, that's all
Facebook
right.
issue. All right, let's get started. We have a lot of information to cover with you guys all today. I'm Mandy Sullivan. I am an account manager here at Visory, and I have my partner in crime, Sam Schumacher, who is the director of product and engineering here with me. We are so thankful that you guys are all taking the time to join us today. And today we're going to go through some best practices that you guys can do for your firm for the end of the year. While I was getting ready for this webinar, I did put together a quick list of best practices that I'm going to share with you guys right now. But some of these we're actually going to dive more into, as you can see the agenda here of what we're going to be covering in depth. But just a quick list to start us off of things that you guys can do for best practices for the end of the year to set your firm up for starting the tax season off on a cybersecurity foot is update your software systems, your hardware, implement multi-factor authentication everywhere, secure remote work tools, conduct an end of the year cybersecurity awareness training for your staff, review and update your access controls, back up your data, conduct a security a risk assessment. This is where you go through and identify potential vulnerabilities in your firm. You're going to want to ensure all of your data is encrypted. And I do have a way that I can send to you guys to show you if you're on a Windows Pro operating system or a Mac, I do have a way that I can send to you to just show you how to make sure that you turn on your encryption on your devices. You're going to want to review your vendor's security policies. You're going to want to establish an incident response plan. You will be so thankful that you've done this in the event of an incident down the road, that you already have this plan in place. You're going to want to get rid of unneeded and out-of-date records that you no longer need to have. And then lastly, you're going to want to invest in cybersecurity liability insurance. Or if you already have a cybersecurity liability insurance plan, you're going to want to make sure that you review that policy to ensure that you're meeting the requirements, such as they might require end device protection, they might require so many different backups, cybersecurity awareness training so many times a year. You're going to want to make sure that you review that policy and ensure that you're implementing all the requirements of that policy. All right, that was a quick list, but that was a lot, and I'm sorry that I threw that all at you there.
That was a lot, but we are going to go deeper into some of those. And the good news is that I think most of what you just described is really just a summary of what the FTC says should be in place,
Absolutely.
especially, that encryption, that MFA, and threat hunting on those endpoints. So a lot of that was the FTC safeguard rules.
Yeah. Yep. I kind of just went through this one, Sam. We
Yeah.
can probably skip on to the
Yeah,
next
well,
slide here.
let's dig a little deeper. So data disposal. I'll share a story. We have a client, and before they were a client, they had a cyber event. And as a part of that cyber incident, that event, a lot of records were breached. And unfortunately, they were retaining data that they were no longer contractually or legally obligated to retain, and they had to notify clients that had offboarded, a decade prior, that their personal information was compromised, and so that's a super uncomfortable conversation. The IRS says you should keep stuff for 7 years. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act recommends 7 years for auditors as well. So that's probably the limit of the life of the data, right? The data life cycle and keeping stuff that you have on clients. So some best practices. We recommend keeping your data organized in such a way that you can identify what's old. Offboarded clients, maybe move them into an archive folder somewhere. But as your data gets to the age that you've defined for your firm that you no longer want to keep that data, you will want to identify it. So where's the old stuff? And then you're going to want to confirm that it's okay to delete. Maybe, if you're the owner operator, you might have that decision. If you have a manager, you might want to check with the manager and just have somebody else take a second look at it. So get a second set of eyes on the data, make sure that it's okay to get rid of. It's not needed for any ongoing audits that you might have going on. You don't have any contract requirements that would have you keep that data a little bit longer. And once you've confirmed that it's okay to delete, at that point, you're going to want to delete it securely. So most of us are using cloud storage at this point, and typically in those cloud repositories, there's going to be a recycle bin. So you'll want to delete it and then go to the recycle bin and go ahead and delete it permanently. It might be an empty trash button. It might be a permanently delete button, but you'll want to make sure that you have securely gotten rid of all of that data. If it's paper data, then you're going to use a shredder, right? Old school. And then you're going to want to keep a record of what you got rid of. This is important, and this can be super simple. It doesn't have to be crazy detailed, but you do want to have some sort of a data disposal log just so that there's a record that you had the data and that you got rid of the data, just in case an audit were to come about and that data was asked about. And then user access is something that you can check on, checking on any, external users that might have access to shared folders and things along those lines. As a general best practice, I'll take a little detour on this one. As a general best practice, at least annually, yeah, I recommend checking on your user list that you might have. If you're using Windows and you're using Microsoft, then inside of your tenant, there's going to be a list of guest users, and check on those and make sure you're cleaning that up. So if you've got old stale users that aren't being used anymore, engagements that have ended, go ahead and get rid of that access, block those logins. That's just one more threat vector, one more access point for bad actors. So you'll want to clean those up. And you'll want to do this regularly. So at least annually. Some folks like to do it twice a year, so they'll do it every 6 months. December is a great time of year to do it. Call it some data cleanup December. So at least annually, maybe twice a year if you've got time for it. But you're definitely going to want to have a data disposal plan, and that's also going to be a part of your written information security plan as well, right, Mandy? So, your WISP in its simplest form, think about it as a document that really just details the data that you will collect, how you collect it, how you transmit it, how you store it, and then ultimately how you dispose of it. So it's going to be in your WISP, your schedule of that data lifecycle. So so consider doing that if you're not doing it already. The next one we have for you is a hardware health check. This one becomes really important because old devices tend to run a little slower, may not be as secure, and ultimately causes downtime for your users, which reduces productivity. So by having a hardware replacement strategy, a life cycle for those assets, if you will, you're going to reduce the risk of system failures, data breaches, and those inefficiencies that come from those older, slower devices that ultimately impact your operations and potentially client trust. So with desktops and laptops, our recommendation is every 3 to 5 years. Some folks are pretty aggressive. They go with 3 years. Other people tend to stretch it a little closer to 5 years. But keep in mind that we all know it. We've been using computers now for decades. As those machines get a little bit older, you start to see some hardware performance declines. You start to lose support for patches, and those patches become ultimately very important for security. So having an annual review, it could be something where you just have a spreadsheet. We all love spreadsheets. You might have a spreadsheet with your whole asset inventory. If you're with a managed service provider, they might be able to get you an export out of their remote monitoring and management tool that identifies when that device went into operation, if there's still any sort of a warranty on it, and if it's still supported for patching and things like that. So check with your managed service provider, or maybe if you're self-managing, just keep a list and recommend maybe a 3 to 5 year replacement cycle for those laptops. For servers, you can stretch those a little bit farther. Every 5 to 7 years, we recommend for those. Keep in mind that the newer the server, typically they have better energy efficiency, better processing power, more security features. So really good to keep those servers fresh. Network equipment, probably every 4 to 6 years for things like firewalls and switches and access points and routers. The newer devices are going to oftentimes offer better bandwidth, so you're going to have a better user experience, faster connectivity, things like that. If you're using any of those external storage devices, probably every 3 to 5 years, kind of like your laptops. That's going to be important because those external storage, they have those solid state drives, those SSDs, and they only have a certain number of read-write cycles in their lifetime. And so if we're using those as a part of our disaster recovery or our data resilience plan, we want to make sure that those are functional and not getting old, because we don't want to risk any data loss. So those would be our hardware replacement sort of recommendations. So yeah, keep an inventory and then prioritize them. This is something that we have to budget for. So this isn't, it's not something that we want to just replace everything all at once. So you might want to prioritize things based on security risks. So when we think about security risks, we think about devices that can no longer accept security patches. So those things that are just completely outdated go first, or we might prioritize things that are failing frequently. That would be the way to prioritize that. And then ultimately, if you are running those on-premises servers, it might be a good time when that asset it's time to replace it. It might be a good time to consider a hosting option. So partnering with a hosting provider that can just take your on-premises server and data and help you with that digital transformation and getting you into the cloud. So those would be our recommendations for that. I mentioned it before, access permissions. Least privileged access is something that is a phrase you might have heard. It's a part of that zero trust strategy. And what that means really is just making sure that people have access to just enough information. So just enough to do their jobs effectively. This becomes really important as a cybersecurity strategy, because if everyone has access to everything, then anyone whose identity gets compromised would be compromising everything in your environment. You can think about this a lot like a QuickBooks user, right? So with your QuickBooks users, you have roles, and those roles have access to specific areas. It might be that you have an accounts payable clerk, and that's all they have access to. You might have an accounts receivable clerk, and that's all that they have access to. So applying those same principles to our data sharing becomes really important. And again, that's a cybersecurity tactic. So cleaning up those guest users, making sure that your employees have access to what they need, but not what they don't need. and making sure that MFA is on everywhere, like Mandy mentioned. So if we have business data anywhere, we should have multi-factor authentication turned on to get to that data. Even better than that might be some sort of identity management platform with single sign-on, so that we're really limiting the number of passwords that we're managing. But a good place to start is just looking at where all of your data is and looking at who has access to that data, and then putting some limitations in place as a security tactic. So those would be our recommendations there.
Yeah, Sam, I actually put together a little assessment on steps that they can do to perform an access permission review of their company.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you can start by doing an inventory of all of your current, so take your staff, put them in a spreadsheet, and then do an inventory of everything that they have access to. And then make sure that what all they have access to is based on the roles or the tasks that they have to perform, back to that least privilege granted, like Sam was talking about earlier.
Or it could be a by client limitation too,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
it could be that we're saying, okay, this person manages these 6 clients, and they don't need access to anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Another part of your review is you're going to want to audit the high risk accounts. So people that have admin access, or if you have service accounts or third-party vendors, you're definitely going to want to audit those a little more closely, make sure that they have strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and really, just making sure that they only have access to the data that they need.
Mandy, while you're there on admin access, pro tip, an admin login should not have the same password as any of your other logins. So let's make sure that our admin logins have unique and complex passwords or passphrases. Good tactic there.
And then you're going to want to remove redundant permissions. So if an employee left, you're going to want to make sure you take that there. And then you're going to want to document the changes. And then you would plan to revisit this twice a year, annually, maybe every quarter, but just go through the same process every single time. And then you also need to add this into your WISP as well. This is part of that WISP requirement. So inventory your access, make sure people only have access to what they need, audit your high risk accounts, remove redundant permissions, document changes, and regularly review it.
Yeah, and also as a part of that WISP, your written information security plan, you will have defined how you will collect data. So that moves us right to the secure data sharing. So this is a great time to think about the ways that you currently get sensitive information from clients or transmit it with outside parties. And so if you're currently accepting sensitive data via email, this might be a good time to think about implementing some sort of client portal or secure document management and file sharing, like a client management sort of platform. I think about it like Alicio. I think about Carbon. Yeah. So things like that. So if you're not currently using a platform like that is secure and allows for those uploads, this might be a great time of year to start thinking about that. If you are accepting and you're going to continue accepting sensitive information via email, this might be a great time to consider an email encryption service, or turning on email encryption if you have the right level of licensing for that. So this is a really great time to just sort of think about your document sharing and how you're collecting data from clients, and then making a plan for next year and any tools or services you might be turning on or subscribing to make that data sharing just a little bit more secure.
Right, let's talk about cybersecurity awareness training. This is really the cornerstone of your cybersecurity strategy. Since human error is the leading cause of data breaches, equipping your employees with knowledge and skills to recognize and respond to threats is essential for you. by doing this, by conducting the training, you're going to reduce your firm's risk of phishing, social engineering, and other attacks, because you're going to have trained your staff on how to recognize what a phishing email looks like, a malicious link, or a fraudulent request. And then they kind of become like that human firewall. Best practices are twice a year. That's what we kind of do here. We have a 45-minute initial training that goes through the latest social engineering and phishing emails that are out there. Teaches you how to look at an email, who it's from, to make sure that it's really from them. And then after that, we do random phishing tests. So our company randomly sends phishing emails out to all of us. And if somebody should click on something, it re-enrolls them in a remediation training and shows them why they shouldn't have clicked on that link. So really, it's a great best practice. It's really inexpensive. So, it's not a really expensive, it's like $4 a month per user. Our platform there's other platforms out there as well, or you can just put together your own training yourself, but really making sure that your team knows how to spot a phishing email or a social engineering attack is really a good best practice for you. And it's also required by the IRS and the FTC. So it's one of
Yeah, business email compromise is one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now. So business email compromise is when your credentials get compromised. Someone's able to get into Outlook. They might impersonate you. They might reroute your mail flow rules so that they can intercept mail or send mail that looks like it's coming from you. And those attacks can be really targeted and really sophisticated. They can be kind of brute force. I think about one of the business email compromise attacks is something called email bombing. And so that's when a bad actor it basically subscribes you to every newsletter under the sun, every subscription for mail that can happen, and your inbox just gets literally hammered. Thousands of emails coming in an hour. So you really want to make sure that those credentials stay safe. Again, going back to multi-factor authentication, there can be some other more sophisticated things that you or your managed service provider can do, like setting up some conditional access so that only trusted devices can even use the password if the password is compromised. But it all starts with training, Mandy. You are spot on. If we know what to look for, if we're staying cyber aware, there's a drastically lower chance that we're going to give up those credentials.
Yeah, and even taking it, training obviously is definitely the cornerstone, but then there's also another layer you can add in there to protect with a good email filter. So that they can it filters out the bad actors before it even hits your staff's inbox.
Yeah. And there's definitely different options. There's some options that a lot of you have probably heard of, like Proofpoint or Mimecast. We recently started using something different that is actually API based. So it's so simple to deploy, but it also works a whole lot better and can stop those email bombings, which is a unique quality to that tool that we're using versus some of those more classic tools like the Proofpoint and the Mimecast. So there's definitely some amazing technology out there that can help as well.
I know I watch with our email filtering, we get a daily report of all of the emails that it has filtered out, whether they were fraudulent looking emails or they just marked them as spam, and so that they don't clutter up my inbox. And on average, it's about 45 to 50 emails a day that Avanan just does not even allow hit my inbox.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, which is nice because sometimes I'm like a squirrel and the email goes off and you're like, go over to do that. And then you lose track of what you were working on. So it's nice to not have that noise in my
Yeah.
inbox all the
Yeah,
time.
those non-productive emails.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
industry term, non-productive email. We want to get those out of the inbox.
yeah. All right, that's going to bring us to backup and disaster recovery. Backup and disaster recovery are really critical for ensuring business continuity in the event of a cyber attack, a natural disaster, or some sort of system failure. Having a backup of your critical data is going to minimize downtime in if one of those do occur. And, you know, Sam, while I was doing some prep for this and reading more on backups, they talked about a 3-2-1 method. So
Mm-hmm.
having 3 different backup strategies
Mm-hmm.
in 2 different locations with one being stored offsite. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of neat. I hadn't heard that method before, but yeah. So implementing some sort of backup strategy like the 3-2-1 method is going to be really critical for you in the event of a disaster.
Yeah,
Um,
all of that leads directly into this, right? So
right.
having that 3-2-1 strategy, but let's be real, having a backup strategy, let's just make sure we're backing up business critical apps and data, Office 365, your G Suite, whatever you're on. We want to make sure that's backed up. And all of that, the 3-2-1 that you just described, Mandy, that's sort of in the managed services, we talk about things like RPOs, the recovery point objective, and RTOs, the recovery time objective, which is really just how long is it going to take to get back to business and how much data are we going to lose. So that's the RPO and RTO, and there's all kinds of strategies around that and tools that can be deployed. And if you're not currently backing up your Office 365 or your G Suite, this would be a really great time of year to look into getting something like that in place. Mandy, you have a real world example of why that's important.
Yeah, so this actually happened to us. We have all of our sales information in Teams and SharePoint. All of our marketing information, all of our sales information is all in this one folder on Teams and SharePoint. Well, somebody on our client success team didn't think that they needed access to that because they don't perform those roles. So they went ahead and was cleaning up their data and just deleted that folder. Gone. I mean, they didn't realize at the time that when they deleted it off of their teams, it deleted it for all of us. So this was definitely a learning opportunity for our company. And thankfully, we have a tool implemented. Dropsuite is the tool we use. We could just go back to just prior to her deleting that folder and restoring it, and all of our information was back. But without having that tool, we would have lost everything. And then it also had us look at our access permissions, you know, making sure that people don't have access to folders that they don't need, and that they definitely don't have access to delete folders, you know, and looking at that. So it was definitely a good learning opportunity. And thankfully, we had a backup situation in place. And I can't stress to you how important it is to back up your data. You don't think about it until you actually need it.
Well, we have another story from about 5 years ago before that backup
Yeah.
was in place. Someone synced the SharePoint with their iCloud and then tried to undo what they had done and inadvertently deleted everything out of a particular site. That site happened to have all of the PowerPoint decks from board meetings and the leadership teams
Sam,
offsite
we know this was you.
meetings.
This was you that did this. This is you, said employee.
Well, it was me. Well, yes, it was me. I'll own it. I did the thing, and it really underscored the importance of a backup. That was an embarrassing one.
Yeah, and you know, another story, not to inundate you all with stories, but this is another good one, and it brings up another point. But not having a backup in place isn't enough. You need to
Yep.
make sure you test the backup, you know, so that in the event that something does happen, you know that it's working. We had a client who left us, was it 2 years, Sam, that they were gone when that happened?
Almost, yeah, almost 2 years.
And they came back to us. They had an employee who was disgruntled, and when the employee left, they deleted all of their data on their way out the door. And the CEO of the company was like, "That's okay. We have backups. We'll just restore." They had never tested their backups, and the backup solution was installed incorrectly, and they had nothing. They lost all of it.
Yeah, the earliest viable backup that they had was 19 months old.
Yeah. And they were in the middle of an audit, if I'm right. Isn't that right?
2 weeks from an audit. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, making sure you have a backup in place, but then also testing that.
Testing.
And yeah, even a couple of backups doesn't hurt.
3, 2, 1, right?
3, 2, 1.
All right, enough on that. That brings us to third-party vendor risk management. So this is something that has started to get a lot more focus, a lot more spotlight in the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months. We're starting to hear more about this out in the cybersecurity space, as blog information and webinars for end users, business owners, business leaders, operations managers, to really ask some pointed questions of their third-party vendors that have access to their data. And some of those questions, and we actually have a checklist on this, some recommended questions that, Mandy, I think we can include in our follow-up.
Yep.
So it's going to be questions about their security practices. So this could be you asking them for a copy of their SOC report, or SOC, that SOC 2 Type 2. If they're not a SOC certified company, then you might ask them questions about who has access to the data. Do any of their third parties have access to your data that's stored within their systems? How often their teams complete cybersecurity awareness training? If they have multi-factor authentication turned on before anyone can access your data from their side. So, really, it's the same kind of questions you're asking about yourself and your business, but just making sure that your vendors are adhering to at least what you require inside of your organization, but hopefully even a little bit beyond that as a service provider. So it is perfectly okay to question the security practices of your vendors. And in fact, they're used to it. They expect it. So this is a really great time of year to check in with them and see what they're doing and how they're protecting your stuff.
All right. So accountants, you guys kind of have a unique position of trust with your clients. And a lot of times you're probably your client's only advisor, like outside of their company. And we're starting to hear more and more from our clients, our accounting clients, that their clients are actually coming to them for cybersecurity advice on what to do to protect their business. So I put together a couple of things here that we're going to walk through of what you can do to help your clients with their cybersecurity and advise them on that. Since you already have a knowledge of their financial system, you can provide them guidance on securing those systems, like enabling encryption or making sure that they have access permission controls in place, that they have strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. You can talk to them about the cybersecurity awareness training that you put your staff through and recommend a platform for them to do the same for their company so that their team learns how to spot phishing attempts and fraudulent emails. You can advocate for strong internal controls, recommending that they implement the controls that people only have access to data that they need. You can assist them with a risk assessment. So you already understand their business operations and their workflows. You can go through with them and identify areas that could potentially be vulnerable, or you could partner with a security company or professional and help recommend the appropriate safeguards for them. And then if they have any compliance regulations that they need to meet with, you can help guide them on those in the framework that they need to do. can recommend the backup and discovery plans. So you can recommend them use the same backup and disaster recovery plan or tools that you were using. You can have promote secure vendor management to them as well. Provide them with that checklist we're going to send you so that they can look at their other vendors and making sure that those vendors are handling their data information securely. And the last thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you recommend and help them budget for cybersecurity liability insurance, because in the event that they do have an incident, you want to make sure that they're covered there, so you can help budget the cost of that cybersecurity liability insurance in for their budget in the upcoming year.
Yeah, the SMB space, those small and medium-sized businesses are such, they're targeted. They're targeted in these kind of spray and pray attacks most often through those phishing emails. And so how cool as their accountant being able to advise them on some security best practices to really deepen that relationship with them. But
Absolutely. It's also going to set you apart from your competitors
yeah.
too, you know?
Yeah, even cooler to be able to hand out that vendor, that third party checklist, and be able to say all the things you're doing to protect their data. So just reputationally, great to be able to say that you're adhering to the FTC safeguards, and you've put proactive measures in place to protect your client data. It really just a powerful thing.
Absolutely. So we weren't going to let you guys off of this webinar without talking about the WISP. It is so important that you have it, before you prepare your first tax form of the season next year. You have to have a written information security plan put in place. It is required by the IRS. It is required by the FTC. I put a QR code on here for you. That is our template. If you want to tackle it yourself and write it, you absolutely can. If you're not really interested in writing a WISP, we can also help you with it. We are running a half-off special right now, so it's a one-time fee of $500, and you'll work with one of our security engineers and get that written WISP information or written information plan put together. Plus, by doing this practice, it's also going to help you with the best practices for end of the year and make you really look at identifying potential vulnerabilities and then putting plans into place to get those fixed.
Absolutely. If you want to dive deeper on any of these topics, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk with you about some additional strategies that you could be looking at. And a lot of these strategies, these policies that we're talking about are free or really inexpensive to implement. Just takes a little legwork. So happy to dive deeper if you should wish. We are going to end a little bit early today. Let everybody get another cup of coffee before their next meeting. We thank everyone for joining us, and look forward to our next webinar in January.
Yeah, and happy holidays, everyone.
Absolutely. Happy
Bye,
holidays.
everyone.